Hey, I'm Jesse O'Brien, founder and head coach of Central Athlete. I'm here with Stephen Fritsch, senior coach. Stephen holds some powerlifting records in Missouri, Illinois, and Kansas, I believe. And so I wanted to get his thoughts on resistance training does not have to be strength training. So what are some other adaptations where we can use forms of resistance that aren't just related to strength?
Yeah, so I think that statement right there holds a lot of validity in that a big misconception rather is that all resistance training is strength training. And strength training has a lot of good and bad raps about it over the last 30 years or so. A lot of misconceptions about strength training are that, it makes you slow, it makes you really big, it makes you unathletic, it's super dangerous. But there's a lot more utility with resistance training than just strength, obviously, in that you can use it to improve a lot of different physiological traits. Strength is definitely one of them, and that's a super important one that people should try to improve if they want to live a long and happy life. That doesn't mean you need to lift, to 90 plus percents all the time. Definitely having phases of strength training would definitely benefit most people. But I think something I communicate a lot with my clients who typically want, a lot of people want strength plus mobility plus hypertrophy plus they want lines on their stomach, right? And so they kind of want the whole package, and they think all of those different things require different modalities. And you can definitely use different modalities for those different things, but resistance training covers a lot of it. And that, a statement I use a lot with my clients is resistance training is literally just weighted mobility. You can definitely become really stiff from resistance training, but that stiffness is usually just a result of the last exercise bout. And, if you move through ranges of motion that are shorter and you do it really fast and you don't recover very well, so you're not drinking water, you're not eating what you're supposed to eat, you're not getting the rest. Stiffness definitely does present itself, right? But if you understand how to utilize tempos, how to utilize holds and pauses and isometrics, those things can be super powerful in terms of improving mobility in various joints and various ranges of motion. And so I think a big one that people need to start wrapping their head around is that resistance training is weighted mobility training. You can improve mobility drastically by using weights in a very safe and effective manner. Another one is obviously hypertrophy. So that one's not near a big as of a misconception, but I think a lot of people think that, you squat, you do your big lifts and you have to do them heavy in order to get the right dose response. And I do think periods of heavy lifting can be good for hypertrophy. I feel like the more and more we learn, there is no real magic rep range. There is no magic percentage to improve any one quality. You're always going to be improving multiple, but for hypertrophy, you can still do those big rock movements, your squats and your deadlifts, with just more volume and less weight to create a really big hypertrophy stimulus, as well as a big metabolic stimulus if you are trying to lose more body fat as well.
So one of the things I'll kind of say this, I and you for sure, we definitely have biases towards resistance training. But one of the things that I like to clear up with people is what you said is resistance training does not have to be strength training. People might tend to get a little stronger doing forms of it, but one of my favorite ways of using resistance training is in a specific manner where you're able to stimulate a metabolic effect. Mm-hmm. If you pair two opposing muscle groups, it doesn't even have to be two opposing muscle groups, but if you take, let's just say, a squat movement and then upper body pulling movement, and you have higher times under tension, so your muscles are contracting longer, as opposed to just doing a single and doing it really quickly, you might let's say somebody's going to do a goblet squat and they're going to go 3 seconds down, 3 seconds up. So the total time a muscle is under tension is 6 seconds for that one repetition. Let's have them do 20 reps there. And then they're going to take a 30-second break, and then they're going to move into a chin up negative, right? Where they're going to hold for 5 seconds here, they're going to lower for 5 seconds, and then they're going to hold active in the bottom for 5 seconds. They're going to do 10 of those. Yeah. Okay. You're going to rest 2 minutes, and you're going to do 3 sets of that. Not only are you getting a muscle endurance stimulus going, you might be getting a little stronger if you haven't been doing this frequently, but you're also going to get a cardiopulmonary response as well. You're gonna sweat, you're gonna be breathing harder, and that way we're able to combine the beneficial effects of what resistance training is going to do to people's muscle mass. We're going to combine muscle endurance stimuli, and we're also going to combine this cardiopulmonary response as well. We're able to get kind of like a 3-for-1, and if we're training with full ranges of motion, we're able to get a mobility aspect in there as well. I think it really is the foundational piece of movement that most people need to be considering. Now, if that's a challenging workout for you, right, maybe this is going to be a split squat, going down for 2 seconds, coming up for 2 seconds, and then inverted rows or ring rows or something like that. We can use these movement patterns, and we can adapt them and scale them to the individual's capacity levels. Maybe instead of 3 sets, we just do 1 set, and that's plenty for this individual. I really, really, really like that, and I've seen massive shifts in people's body composition when they pair that with an intelligent and consistent nutritional practice.
Right, and that's huge, especially what you were saying just about utilizing supersets and tempos and all that. Charles Poliquin was saying this stuff, 20 plus years ago. And it just seems to kind of just be kind of lost in the weeds. And, people are always trying to find these new answers, but, these answers have been written in literature for a really, really long time. Kind of a non sequitur little pivot, just another, I think, a really, really big misconception that I heard a lot when I was coaching sports performance and working with parents and youth athletes is that resistance training is potentially really harmful, and it's not a good modality for athletic performance. And I think that's just obviously super duper false, especially with kids, in that, I would get parents that would say, hey, I want my kid to jump higher. And I'm like, he's 8, what am I going to do to make him jump higher? And resistance training is super powerful for very, very beginner athletes, and just kids, beginner athletes, or just people who have never really done resistance training for motor control. It does 100% teach you how to move in space, how to be coordinated with external objects, and how to control your body under load. All those things are prerequisites for athletic performance. You have to be able to do those before you can do anything that's athletic. And the biggest thing, again, in athletic performance is, there's speed and there's quickness, there's all this agility stuff, but it's rate of force development. If you don't have good rate of force development, you will not be able to apply maximal force to any submaximal load, or you won't be able to apply maximal force to no load, like plyometrics and things like that. And so I think understanding that, a certain level of resistance training has to be a prerequisite for athletic performance, but that's also a really powerful tool for teaching young kids, young athletes, more kinesthetic awareness and moving their body in space and controlling different objects. And that is massive for being athletic for the rest of your life, the rest of your career.
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to differentiate resistance training with strength training, because inevitably if I were to say strength training, or we're going to use weights or weight training, there is this misconception that if that 8-year-old came in, I'm going to give him a heavy barbell and I'm going to be just pushing him. And if you have that 8-year-old who comes in, he does not at all need to be doing super heavy loads. It's all about motor control. So he's also a great candidate to be doing that super slow tempo stuff. We want to teach him how to own every single position, how to understand how to drive his knees out if he's squatting potentially, all these subtleties of movement. And then after a period of time, then we can actually start to challenge him with maybe some muscle endurance. Then if we challenge him with muscle endurance, the next thing that we can press into is strength endurance. They get really good at a little bit higher loading. And this is really in the trajectory of years, then when they've really earned it with great great technical proficiency, great muscle endurance. They're able to do submaximal loads for repeated efforts. Then, and only then, are we able to progress them into absolute strength lifts, right? Something that might be arguably 70% of their contractile potential and greater.
Right. Just pivoting or just piggybacking, phases of training are of the utmost importance when we're coaches thinking about trying to get somebody stronger or getting somebody better body composition. You have to understand phases of training. You have to understand that each phase, to Jesse's point, trains a specific quality, and stringing those specific qualities together makes the client, makes the athlete have more capacity to handle heavier loads, and more importantly, it makes them way more confident at handling heavy loads. When you've kind of run, even if it's a linear progression, right, and you're going from really high volume, you're squatting 10s and things like that, and then you move into 5s, and you move into 3s, right, like a super basic linear progression. By them doing all the 10s, all the 5s, that's just, a lot of people don't think about it, but it's a ton of practice. It's a ton of repetitions. It's a ton of repetitions at lower weight. Every repetition is an opportunity to improve technique and improve form and improve bracing, improve breathing. And when you accumulate a lot of that practice and then you move into a more intensive strength phase where you're working on absolute strength, not only are they physiologically more prepared, but psychologically they're way more confident and way more prepared to handle those heavy loads because they're so dialed in with their technique. And I think that's another super powerful tool and utility for resistance training.
People forget the fact that one of the physical aspects of fitness is skill development. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm learning how to fish, there is a skill of learning how to cast my lure, right? If I'm learning how to back squat, there is a skill of learning how to flex in my hips and my knees simultaneously as I get down to a bottom of that squat. And there are very, very specific proprioceptive and neuromuscular adaptations that happen for people to get better. And that is the foundation of any sort of movement aspect. Everything from learning to crawl all the way to doing a more complex movement like a barbell snatch.
Right. And so I think this is a good way to kind of come full circle from our last conversation where we're talking about, this lifestyle epidemic that we are currently experiencing in America, and that people are always trying to find new answers, and we kind of just laid it out very simply. It's, resistance training, it's a little bit of aerobic stuff, and those are essentially the keys to living a long, healthy life. But, we just kind of went into the weeds just a little bit on how, vast resistance training really, or how, what it all it encompasses. It's very, very vast. It's not just getting stronger. Getting stronger is definitely a very positive byproduct of it, but there are a ton of other reasons why and how we can use resistance training to not just improve physiological function, but also for overall longevity for any client ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of the things that we're talking about from my perspective are very practical and very intellectually easy to understand, right? I mean, you say something a lot, which is the people who get the strongest are the ones who lift the heaviest most frequently. And there's not a lot to be understood about that, but there is a lot of nuances and details with doing this stuff correctly. And because there's so much noise of we should do this, think about this, think about this, so many health and fitness practitioners jump from one thing to the next. And I think one of the best things that we provide as value with remote coaching is we keep people on a very specific plan. And if the plan's not working, the first thing I want to understand is, are you actually doing the plan?
Yeah.
Right? And 9 out of 10 times, if it's not working, it's a compliance issue. 10% of the time, yeah, sometimes we need to get in the weeds and we need to refine strategies. But I think remote coaching really is this utilitarian service that will help people live long, prosperous lives. Because it's really teaching people these fundamental movement skills, these fundamental nutritional principles, and these fundamental behavioral practices that will really keep people living a kick-ass life for as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartely agree, and just I think it's a good way to kind of wrap and say that if you are somebody that is looking for improvement in their quality of life, and you're looking for a professional to help sift through all that noise, I think that's one of the best personal investments one can ever make, because I don't think it's realistic for somebody who doesn't have any like base knowledge or education around health and fitness to be able to sift through everything that's out there on the internet in terms of eating this, you should eat this way, you should eat that way, you should do this type of training. I think one of the best investments you can make is getting a really qualified individual that not only understands these principles in exercise and nutrition, but also understands human behavior, human psychology, and human empathy, and understanding where each person is kind of falling short, and is able to meet that person where they are, and have honest, open communication about those things, and coming up with a very collaborative plan to systematically move you to where you want to be. And at Central Athlete, that's really what we do. At our core is that we do exercise, we do nutrition, but mostly it's behavior change, it's understanding people, it's listening to people, it's then applying those principles to the individual that I think we really, really excel at. And our team is full of very qualified individuals that we all have these different strengths and weaknesses, but we have a very collaborative team where we're constantly continuing education and refining our systems and refining the ways in which we are communicating with people and delivering service with people, just so that our clients here on site and remotely around the world can receive the most value from this investment that people are making in themselves. And I think that's something that we're not seeing a ton of in the fitness industry. And so I think if this is something that resonates with you, we have 4 very qualified coaches on staff. One is completely remote. We have 3 on site here in Austin, and we offer free strategy sessions where we literally just sit and listen to your story, and we try to understand where these different problems are coming from, and we then just provide solutions for that with vehicles of exercise, nutrition, and different lifestyle interventions.
Thank you for imparting your wisdom from years of strength training and resistance training with me today. And if anybody's interested, head to centralathlete.com, set up a strategy session, and we'll see you soon.